Hello everyone, my name is Raymond, and welcome back to another indie game devlog video. For those who don't know, I'm Raymond, and I'm working on this prototype codenamed Project Feline, which has developed so far into a third-person game with wall-running action, starring a feline human character as the protagonist. I'm currently in the process of developing a completely new character model from scratch in the style of Japanese manga and anime. Now this week I was hoping to put out another video, however, the texturing process of the model is taking a bit longer than expected, so I thought this week I would do a little Q&A video, because I haven't done one in a while, and I'd also like to note and thank all the viewers, as I believe a few weeks ago we reached over the 20,000 subscriber mark, so I guess this is sort of a very late 20k sub special as well. And I know that there's a lot of questions that have gone unanswered so far that a lot of you would like to know the answers to, so I'm going to go through some of those today. So some of these questions range from things about the game specifically towards sort of workflow related questions or questions about being an indie developer. So if you're interested in those things, you want to know a bit about how the development is like from an indie developer perspective and from a teaching perspective, then stay tuned for the video. First question we have is from Witchrom. In the current version of the game, there are luminous collectibles. Do you plan to make them fuel for the boost or something, like boost in Sonic games? Well, at the moment, I wasn't too sure whether to put the collectibles in first off, but putting them in, it felt like a solution to a problem I had where just the wall running on its own was a bit too boring. So it kind of in a way acts as a mini challenge in that core loop of trying to stay on walls. And I thought that was a very good addition because it kind of gives you something to try and aim at, and it rewards players who are very precise with how they use the mechanic. I've had the idea of a boost mechanic on my mind for a while now, but I haven't had much time to implement it yet, but I'll be sure to give that a try when I get around to it. Next question from Corey Baylor. What do you do when you have zero inspiration? Well, that's a great question. Usually I try to just take time off until the inspiration comes back. I find it very difficult to get anything done when you're not that inspired. The only workaround I found to this is that if by chance I happen to have a task to do that doesn't require a lot of inspiration, then that sure makes the whole thing easier. If it's something monotonous and repetitive, like fixing something in a model or trying to fix a few bugs in the code, I don't find I need a lot of inspiration to do those things. It's just, I would feel bad if I didn't do those. So in a short answer of that, I'd say if possible, I try to, if I have zero inspiration, just spend time on stuff that doesn't need much inspiration, like bug fixing or just repairing anything in the project. And if none of that exists, I'll try and go and get inspiration. So I'll actually leave the house, I'll leave the confines of my bedroom, and just try to experience some new things and try to just, get a change of scenery and those sorts of things. Next question from the creator. How do you come up with smart programming solutions like your back end of your UI? Do you have any advice for other programmers on how to research such a topic? This is an interesting one. For those familiar to the channel, you'll know that I never had a formal education in programming. I did have a little education in 3D art here and there, but I learnt programming mostly just from watching YouTube and teaching myself. So I may not be the most qualified person to talk on this subject, but I will say, usually when it comes to making a system, I don't know if this is just exclusive to me or not, but I always seem to have this voice in the back of my head telling me that there's a more efficient way I could be going about it. That just leads me down a rabbit hole of trying to research new things, and that's often, with the programming example with my UI specifically, it led me down the Unreal Engine documentation and just reading through that and trying to figure out how all of these systems were intended to be used, and then try to work within that framework. But it really does depend on the situation. For the UI, that was the case. For programmers starting out that want to design things this way, I would look into concepts such as composition or inheritance, or just the building blocks of object-oriented programming, as I find that those principles help me a lot to develop systems in such a way where it wouldn't be a pain in the neck later on in development, and I could just recycle and reuse as much code as possible. Next question from DR35Dev. How many hours did you spend on your game? Edit. What I'm trying to say is, how do you manage life and make the game at the same time? If you've got a busy schedule and you want to try and work on a project, I guess the best thing to just start off with is allocating some amount of time to the project. It doesn't matter if it's 15 minutes every day or 15 minutes every week or 3 hours a day or whatever works, because as long as you're spending some amount of time on this project, I believe that you'll make some headway with it, even if it takes a while. Back when I had a bit of burnout, I was trying to spend at least 1 hour a day, which really helped when I was beginning. But then over time, I got to the state where I could work for like 6 or 7 hours a day without a break, which might not have been the most healthy choice in retrospect. But a lot of that was just from creating lists and writing them out of things I needed to do and ticking them off, because I know that there's a lot of sort of behavioral psychology behind those sorts of things that kind of helps you to get things done. So at the beginning of every week or whatever work span I'm in, I always just try and write down what needs to get done, set a few deadlines, try to stick to them, and just tick them off as I go. And ticking them off for me feels really satisfying. And, you know, getting the actual work done is also very satisfying as well. So I kind of becomes this positive cycle where the more I get done, the more better I feel. Of course, it doesn't always go to plan, but I guess when that doesn't happen, the best you could do is just not be too hard on yourself and change your trajectory and adjust it and try again. So if you can keep that cycle going, I think it's becomes a lot easier to manage life and work than it would be otherwise. Next question from German. How much time do you estimate the game is going to take to make? I haven't really thought about it that much in the long term. With developing this project, I kind of just do it week by week or month by month. I should probably think a bit more ahead, but I estimate at the rate things are going, I mean, it's going a little slow at the moment, but I'd say I wouldn't want to spend probably more than a year and a half working on it. I think after that point, it's going to get very dangerous. When you work on something that long, it becomes a lot harder to continue. So I would say I want to try and get it all out and get the game to a finished state in around the next year or year and a half, I'd say. Next question from Potjob. Hey, do you have any tips for artists that want to start working in a game engine like Unreal or Unity? I would just say, you know, don't feel like it's not meant for you, I would say, if that's a feeling you're having. If you feel like that the engines are meant to be for programmers, I can assure you that that's absolutely not the case. In fact, many engines like Unreal were specifically designed to be easier for artists and designers. So I would say don't feel pressured and don't feel put off if you've got programmer friends telling you that you shouldn't be doing it. I would just do it anyway because it's a lot easier now than ever before for an artist to get into this sort of thing. Next question from Dark Voids. How do you come up with ideas for your games that aren't similar towards other games, since most ideas come from those games? I don't know. I don't really think that all my ideas are that original. And I don't think that's what really matters. I think what matters a lot more is how those ideas are articulated rather than the ideas themselves. I think this is especially true in cases like storytelling. I read a book once talking about the different kinds of stories, and it concluded that there's only really about 47-ish different types of stories in humanity. And that's not a lot considering the amount of stories that exist in today's world. And you'll find, you know, heaps of similarities with all sorts of stories and game ideas and heaps of other things. Like, how many games have you seen that have shooting in them? You know, there's only so much you can do with shooting, but you'll find that it's not the shooting that makes the game unique, it's how the shooting is done and presented. That's what I think makes a game original. To me, the most important bit is how can I take these things I like and present them in my own unique way? And that's really the key motivation behind this whole project. Next question from Lee Katrina. Any plans to release the game on other platforms, for example, Steam? I know very deep down I definitely want to try and aim for a Steam release, and perhaps some other stores and platforms depending on what I have available. You know, a lot of people have asked about whether I'm going to do a console port or not, and I can't really say at the moment, but I will definitely say it's something I'd like. It's something I would definitely love to try and aim for. Whether or not we'll get there, though, depends on how the development goes, of course, but definitely I'm looking into those options. Next question from Gold. Just a general question, what is your opinion on outside support from people who enjoy your content on things relating to games such as art, music, story, and such? Saying this because it needs to be generalized with the sheer amount of requests. Alright, yeah, I will indeed acknowledge that there has been an overwhelming amount of requests for people to volunteer to work on this project. And in my general opinion on it, I think most people have observed that I'm very careful with who I work with. And the reason for that is because, for me, it's a very, very important project. It's basically the thing I'm doing most of the time. And I definitely have a lot invested in it. Not in terms of money, but just in terms of emotionally. I'm very connected to this game, and it's something I want to be remembered for. And the reason I'm very cautious about collaborations and who I have work on it and who I don't, especially when it comes to volunteers, is because, you know, there's a lot of different factors when you start bringing more people in. Like, the more people you have, the more variables there are. And, you know, I can barely do a good enough job managing myself, let alone a team. At least that's how it is at the moment. The other thing, though, is in regards to if I have some volunteers on, it's going to be impossible for me to expect them to care just as much as I will, which is what I find to be the case with many projects where there's one guy working on it and he's getting other people to help. I don't really want to put that burden on people and say, you know, you need to work this many hours for my project, you know, just to volunteer for it. Because as it stands right now, I can't afford to hire or outsource any people at the current time, but that may be subject to change. But with volunteers especially, I don't want to be putting that kind of responsibility on people, especially for something that I'd like to release commercially. Part of the reason is financially. I don't want to bloat up the project financially. I want to try and keep it as cheap as I can to a reasonable degree. A lot of this stuff as well I can kind of do already. So yeah, I might be able to save time by asking people some favors to do it for me. At the end of the day, I don't think it's fair to expect that from people, especially as volunteers. If I am going to have someone working on it, I would really like to compensate them appropriately for the work they're putting in, especially with the kind of standards I have of myself. I like to work really hard and I really put my best into it. And if someone's going to do that as well, I really want it to be worth it for them. Because exposure is not enough, especially for an artist, and exposure is not going to pay the bills. I do appreciate, though, that's not to say I don't appreciate the amount of people that do want to help the project. That was the last thing I expected. I didn't expect anyone to want to even touch the project, or yet alone play it, yet alone even help with it. So I really do appreciate everyone who's reaching out and wants to contribute. Unfortunately, as it stands currently, I don't want to bring on too many hands on deck just to keep the project as small as possible. Because at the moment, it's still in its prototype stage, but when I get to creating more of the content heavy side of things, I'll then start looking into some options of outsourcing. But whoever I want working on this, I want to do it properly, and I don't just want them volunteering and just paying them an exposure. I want to do it the right way, and I want to compensate them appropriately. So until such a time I can make that happen, it's going to stay as a solo project. And I know it's a bit disheartening for some to hear. I know that a lot of you really want to help, but as it stands currently, I just want to keep the project low and minimal and as less bloated as I can. But should just an opportunity arise where I can afford to outsource some people, then having other external help would definitely be a possibility. Alrighty, so that will about do it for all the questions we have in our list. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that some of my answers sort of answered those questions that you had in your head, or that, some of these questions were insightful as to how you thought about game development. If you have any more questions you'd like to ask me, be sure to join the community Discord linked in the description. I have a special section just for Q&A, which is where I read these questions from. So if you'd like to see your questions answered in one of my videos, drop a question in the Q&A chat, or reply to the pinned comment below, and I'll be sure to have a look at those as well. If you want to see more devlog videos or Q&A videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and smash that bell so you don't miss the next upload. Again, I'm very hopeful to upload my next devlog soon, so if you don't want to miss it, it's very important that you subscribe, because then you'll see it right away and you get to see my process on it. So hopefully that's exciting for you. If you want to see my previous devlogs and videos, I have them linked below if you want to check out the project I'm working on. And of course, if you want to try the game out, I actually have it available on my itch page, which I've also linked down in the description. So if you want to play the prototype for free, give me some feedback on it, maybe do a few speed runs on it. There is in fact a community moderated leaderboard tracking the fastest times. So if that's something you're interested in, I have that linked in the description. Thank you again for watching through this Q&A video. I hope this was informative, and I will see you in the next video.